No, it was about 11:30, I guess, on Saturday night when I got the call. They've shot Trump. I was horrified, but somehow not particularly shocked. I think some of the narrative that has been whipped up against him, not just by those on the extreme left, but actually propagated through so-called comedians and quite a lot of American mainstream media, made me think that somehow it was inevitable that he would, at some point, face a serious attempt on his life. I find it really hard to believe that the Secret Service could have allowed a man onto the only roof in the vicinity, not 130 yards away from where President number 45 was speaking, by an absolute miracle of fate. I mean, literally, as the guy was about to pull the trigger, he moved his head sharply to look at one of the screens to get some immigration statistics, and the bullet went through his ear. And thank God for that. Thank God for that. Will it change him as a man? I very much doubt it. I very much doubt it. I think he'll be just even more determined to carry on the way that he is. But you see, even before the election, he was looking in an ever stronger position. And I say that because the polling in the key swing states is very much going in his direction. So I wonder, is a Trump win now absolutely on the cards? Give me your thoughts on that. Is he going to win? Farage at GBNews.com. Or, of course, you can go on X, hashtag Farage on GB News. Well, joining me now down the line is Spencer Critchley, Democrat strategist and former communications advisor to President Obama. Spencer, here's a funny thing. Before this appalling assassination attempt, the pressure was beginning to mount on Joe Biden. 20 elected members of the House of Reps for the Democrats, significant Hollywood figures, and others were saying, look, Joe, your time's up, you've got to go. It sort of oddly seems that somehow Biden's position is now more stable since the assassination attempt than it was before. Am I right about that?
Well, I think it's certainly taken some of the attention off of that issue, and of course, deservedly so. It was an utterly horrible event, as anybody who believes in democracy must recognize. By the way, I shouldn't go on before declining your kind offer of a promotion. I was not a communications advisor directly to President Obama. There were very capable people doing that. I was an advisor on both of his campaigns. But yeah, you know, it was an extremely uncomfortable position for President Biden and his campaign as of late last week. I think, of course, our attention must be focused on this assassination attempt, uncovering what kind of failures, as it appears now, led to the possibility of that happening after 43 years without a successful attempt on a president or presidential candidate, although God knows there have been multiple other attempts on other figures, some successful and many, many that the public never hears about. But that issue does remain. President Biden, by Democratic consensus, has one of the most successful records of any president. Actually, I should say not just Democratic consensus. There are many Republicans who see it the same way, whether they're happy about that or not. But given his performance in that debate, there is this open question of what kind of damage that's done to his campaign.
Well, you say the debate, but what about the NATO summit? I mean, Zelensky's introduced as Putin. Kamala Harris, the vice president, is introduced as Trump. I mean, come on. The guy's past it. He's got senile dementia. Doesn't your party just need to wake up and get rid of him?
I don't think we know that. And of course, for every clip of Biden doing something like that, we can produce clips of Trump trailing off at the end of a sentence into gibberish, or giving us a series of disconnected speculations about sharks and electric boats and electric airplanes that supposedly can only fly when the sun is shining. But I think that the key issue here is, first of all, it's a legitimate question. Is there a health condition that people should be concerned about? And I always recommend to clients, as naive as it may sound, both because it's the right thing to do, but also it ends up being the strategically smart thing to do, is start with the truth. If the truth, which can only be known to the people closest to him, is that President Biden does have some kind of serious condition, that's what they should be acting based on, because really, ultimately, there's no way to spin something like that. On the other hand, If this is just a difficulty with language and cognitively he's perfectly fine, then they can proceed with that. The challenge, and commit to it to try to win, but the challenge they face is that politics is almost entirely based on emotion and symbolism and the way people feel about a candidate, often making an unconscious decision within a fraction of a second, as research shows.
That's true.
So no matter how qualified President Biden might be, he's fighting against that tendency of human psychology.
Yeah, no, it's a very, very fair point. Spencer Critchley, thank you very much indeed for joining me down the line from California. Joining me is a distinguished panel of Kwasi Kwarteng, former Tory MP and former Chancellor, of course, of the Exchequer, Sir Nick Harvey, former Chief Executive of the Lib Dems and Minister for the Armed Forces, and Matthew Torbett, a former Labour advisor. Let's, Kwasi, start with you.
Sure.
The last time this happened, it was Reagan.
That's right.
He was president. He got a bullet very close to the heart. He famously, when he got to the hospital, said to the surgeon, I hope you're a Republican.
Yeah, that's right.
His poll ratings went up by 10%.
That's right.
He won 49 of 50 presidential states, albeit with a great economy.
That's right.
Next time round, can Trump be stopped?
So look, I think before the assassination attempt, we had that debate, which we all saw.
Yeah.
And I have to say Biden performed disastrously, even by his own admission. So at that point, it looked very likely that Trump was certainly the favourite.
Yeah.
I think if you compound that with this extraordinary event in terms of the assassination, he's got to be the odds-on favourite. I mean, it's very, very likely that he will win.
Yeah, I rather take that view. Sir Nick Harvey, you know, he was in a life-threatening situation, and whether you love him or not, to stand up there and do that. And we all think of the Iwo Jima picture.
That's exactly.
You know, after that terrible battle against the Japanese, Imperial Japanese Army, and the American flag being raised, and that was a posed picture. This was kind of, I mean, that's enough to win him the election, isn't it?
He certainly put him in pole position. There's no doubt about that. I don't, in my heart, think that Biden can beat him, but I wouldn't discount the possibility that even now there is a change of nominee for the Democrats. And then who knows? It depends who it is. It depends what their appeal is, what their weaknesses are. He's the odds-on favourite, as Kwasi says, but it's early to bank it just yet, I'd have thought.
Right.
No. Right. Now, he also picked his vice presidential running mate over the weekend. Speculation on this has been endless. It's J.D. Vance, author of Hillbilly Elegy, a best-selling book, and Vance himself coming from a very, very poor, very difficult background, getting qualified in law, serving in a distinguished way as a US Marine, and he's and I've known JD for over a decade. He is a very intelligent, very distinguished guy, but gosh, he's a full-on conservative. Here he was speaking last week in Washington, D.C.
I was talking with a friend recently, and we were talking about, you know, one of the big dangers in the world, of course, is nuclear proliferation, though, of course, the Biden administration doesn't care about it. And I was talking about, you know, what is the first truly Islamist country that will get a nuclear weapon? And we were like, maybe it's Iran, you know, maybe Pakistan already kind of counts. And then we sort of finally decided maybe it's actually the UK, since Labour just took over.
Well, Matthew Torbett, I mean, he was talking to a Conservative conference and he was a bit tongue-in-cheek in what he said, but it raises quite a big fundamental question. Now, I was very, very pleased that the Prime Minister managed to get a few minutes on the phone with Trump. I thought that was very important that he did that. But you've got sort of David Lammy as Foreign Secretary, who said very disobliging things about the President. I presume this J.D. Vance clip's not going to go down very well, is it?
I wouldn't have thought it had gone down very well. And similar to you, I think the more fascinating thing is how is this special relationship going to be managed under a Trump presidency? Because we've had David Lammy say things. I think even Keir Starmer has said things in the past about Donald Trump's conduct or his political views. If I was advising, I'd say let's put it down to a bit of tit for tat. You know, we all say things in certain rooms that we might not say in others. Yeah. The main thing is the stability of the West when we've got things like...
Do you think this Labour government is capable? I mean, you know, if Trump wins this election, and I think, you know, these two...
Highly likely.
I think
it's not a dead cert.
No, nothing's a dead cert. Right. But, you know, death and taxes, I think, was, you know, probably Dr. Johnson was right. But assuming Trump does win, and you've got quite a hawkish Conservative vice president in the form of Vance, is this Labour Party capable of forming good relationships with America? Because it does matter, doesn't it?
They'll have to be. It's as simple as that.
But can they?
I think it depends who they want to put in the ambassadorial role, which there's been lots of talk about. I think, would somebody like David Miliband go down well on the other side? I'm not sure. He's somebody that's, not really said anything political in the sense of putting down Trump in recent years or anything like that. I think Emily Thornberry not being there is also probably a positive. But I think it depends on the people who are around the politicians in the room that will make these conversations work, all being well, on both sides.
Well, it matters, and it matters, folks, because right at the heart of this is, of course, our membership of NATO. And without the Americans, NATO, frankly, is nothing. And I've always seen us as being a very important bridge between America and the rest of Europe. Now,